right, welcome everyone to the maintenance stage. My name's Leanne Corner and I'm chairing the room today. For our second speaker, I'd like to introduce Chloe Franks to you all. She's speaking about optimising rail shutdowns, data, mindset and stakeholder alignment in a customer-centric network. So Chloe has worked in the mining and railing industry for 13 years. Over that time, she's had many roles across superintendent, supervisor, HR, business partner. She's a wife and has two beautiful children and is a self-professed crazy dog mum for two perfect dogs. She's currently working in the rail shutdown space and as the integrated closure superintendent. And a fun fact about Chloe is she is a true sucker for animals. The last time she called her boss to say she was going to be late, it was because she was helping a stray horse back into a paddock in full business attire, heels and all, on the side of the road. Please make Chloe feel very welcome.
Good morning. Yes, my boss does not know what to expect when I ring him at 6:30 in the morning now, and I've certainly got myself into some situations. All right. Let's see if this wants to work. I tend to break technology every time I touch it, so cross your fingers for me. Okay, so first and foremost, thank you so much for your time. I have a tendency to get a little bit passionate because I'm one of those really annoying people that genuinely loves my job. And I've been lucky enough to love a lot of the jobs that I've had the pleasure of working in over the years. So I'll use the terms interchangeably. So I'm Superintendent Integrated Closures, which is rail shutdowns, essentially, with Horizon. And today I'll talk through some of the boring stuff, a little bit of context about Horizon. I'll go through what our current state was when I first joined the role around that 2.5 years ago. And then I'll focus on three key themes. So I'll touch on mindset, I'll touch on data, which I absolutely love, and I'll touch on stakeholder alignment, which for us is really around that customer focus. And more than that, what are the results that we've seen and what is our forward focus? So very briefly, no more funny animal stories. A little bit about me. So I first stepped onto a mine site in 2011. It was a coal mine in central Queensland. And I spent over 10 years in the Pilbara in Western Australia working in mining over there. And now I've jumped back over to Queensland, back to family with all my children and my lovely husband, and I work in the railway now. I feel like I could fill a whole speech around working in mining, but I won't today. But let's just say it was baptism by fire. There was a lot of culture shocks and a lot of really great lessons that have turned me into the person that I am today. For me personally, across all of the mine sites, all of the teams that I've worked in, I don't learn just by listening to boring stories or those endless monotonous trainings. I learn through storytelling. So something I would always go up to people on site when I was chatting to them is I'd ask them questions, and I would want to know, tell me your horror story. What was your worst day and how did you recover? What is your best advice and what's your biggest lesson? So I'm going to try and weave in some of my insights from working in rail shutdowns into this presentation today. And I'll be honest, there are definitely some stuff-ups that I will share with all of you. So really brief, a little bit about Horizon. So we are Australia's largest rail freight operator. We have the Central Queensland Coal Network, which isn't the greatest visual on the right there. So we operate across 4 systems. We've got Newlands, Goonyella, Blackwater and the Mara system. And some cool figures up there. The fun one, which is always the dollars. So for FY26, we have $207 million worth of maintenance and approximately $322 million worth of renewals in terms of the yearly portfolio that we need to deliver, with a large portion of that delivered in our shutdowns, which are around that 6 to 8 weekly cycle. So there's a lot in there. The tricky part for me, in particular coming across from mining, and something that I have struggled with for a little while, was this concept of the customer. And Horizon is quite unique. We have 50 customers, which I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with. That brings its whole other ball game of challenges with it. And I'll go through some of the examples that we've tried to improve in that space. So the big piece in shutdowns, I've listed a lot of the customers there. So we're very much in a world of dueling priorities externally, but as well as that internally in shutdowns, you've got that never-ending argument of maintenance versus renewals. I'm a little bit biased towards maintenance because that's probably more my background, but renewals is absolutely just as important. But sometimes you are making trade-off decisions, when you're under fire and when things aren't going to plan, which is quite common. And it's really important about how does our team balance today's fire with tomorrow's foundations. Okay, so when I first came into the role, prepare to be triggered, as I was, this set off red flashing lights in my brain, and these were some of the comments that I was hearing frequently, whether it was from my own team, some key stakeholders, or just around the grounds in different hallways or on site. So it's not late until it's late, which if you're in shutdowns, it hurts your soul to hear that. Closures always overrun. I can't change anything anyway, so that whole why bother mindset. Things are just getting worse. And my personal favourite, which I think I flinch, that's not my job. I feel like you would have all heard these in your own roles as well. They're quite common. So let's kick into mindset. So there was a lot of these comments, I was like, oh my gosh, we've got so much improvement that we can make, and we've got so much opportunity with our team in what we can deliver and do better. The first part of that was really diving into the mindset of both my direct team and our stakeholders, because we weren't able to change until we got that piece right first. And I know you're probably all in here for the data stuff, so I won't go too heavy into the mindset. So we had a perception that closures were, chronically behind. I am a big believer that your perception is your reality, and this widespread perception was absolutely driving my team into quite a fixed mindset, which was absolutely not where we needed to be. It was derailing momentum. They were extremely resistant to change, and we have quite a small team in our shutdown planning and execution team, and I need them to be very adaptable. So we work across multiple phases. So we will do the planning of, multiple shutdowns at one time, but we'll do the planning, and I need them to be extremely analytical. I need them to be devil in the detail. We need to be picking up these errors before it comes to execution, and fitting all of these complex jobs in together. It can be, 200 plus work activities. And if we're talking work order numbers, it would be in the hundreds and hundreds because we group them together. Then when it comes to execution, our team are that central facilitation and coordination of the shutdown. So those same people then need to be quite agile in, responding to pressure, taking the lead when the wheels are falling off, quite literally, and leaning into recovery scenarios. So they do need to have quite high resilience, and they do need to intervene early. I will be honest, when I first joined the role, which I'm sure a lot of you can attest to, I didn't have the right people or the mindsets in the room, and that was really challenging. There was a lot of people management that went into that to try and get them to choose to change. And I'm very grateful now, very much so in the last 12 months, we've really lifted in how we execute. So planning, we always did quite well. Execution is where we probably didn't put our best foot forward and really take ownership and accountability of what we can change and how we can serve people in the field, because that's the bottom line. You've got hundreds of people out there doing massive shifts in, most of the time, awful central Queensland heat, with some really tough challenges, tight time constraints. We've got costs hanging over our head, and you've got a supply chain waiting to, get up rearing and start going. So we need to support them, and that needs to be our key focus. All right, so a couple of handy hints that I've used a fair bit with my team. Don't always focus on the bad stuff. We've certainly gone through a lot with our team. Sometimes they have absolutely hated me. Sometimes they love me, but we're very much trying to stretch and trying to grow to produce and deliver some better results for the business. I love the Pygmalion effect around expectations shape performance. For me, rather than just always trying to give that negative feedback, I really like balancing it out with, well, what do we do good? How do we shift it to great? What are the things that we do well, and let's start delivering that exceptionally to give them a bit of a break from that, constant negative, well, this is the stuff we failed, or this is what we stuffed up last shutdown. My live and breathe model on the right is the stress productivity diagram. For any of you that do work in shutdowns, it can be quite high pressure and high stress scenarios in execution. I really encourage you to know what your limit is, but also what your team's limit is. And it will be different, and each individual has got different limits. As a leader, it is so imperative that you know when to intervene and take things off their plate and support them. Productivity increases with pressure, and I say this with such emphasis, to a point. And we work in a very unforgiving environment that if we start leading into that, stressed exhaustion, unproductive state, we could be making unsafe decisions. We could be exposing teams to burnout. And it is really, really important to recognise that, both in yourself and also your teams as well. The big one for us that unlocks it, because I do have a team of perfectionists, 80-20, and they'll now say this back to me because they'll be wrapped up, trying to, work something through and problem solve something, and then they'll look at me and be like, yeah, all right, 80-20. I've really got to focus on what matters most. And my last point there, I joke about this all the time. If I didn't have people in my team, my job would be 1,000 times easier, but it's also the best part of my role. So leading people or working with people is absolutely the greatest challenge, but it certainly is the best reward as well. All right, last one on mindset. Horizon shutdowns, mining shutdowns as well that I've worked with previously, those teams are exceptional at firefighting. When things go sideways, they are fantastic at, this really awesome, quick collaboration, fantastic problem solving. Everyone seems to lean in and help, which is absolutely exceptional. How do we change that reactive excellence into proactive knowledge capture? And my question up there is, who do you call when you have an urgent problem, when you have a really technical breakdown that's happened on a certain piece of gear, or something quite specific that's happened that you're trying to fix or deal with? If you're anything like me, I could probably list them on two hands, and they're always the same people. You will always call your gurus. You will always call your go-tos. And for the most part, they're people that are your tech experts that have gone through it before. How do we share that learning? How do we capture those, after action reviews and make it really scalable so you don't have just a few superheroes that you're constantly going to, but how can you challenge yourself to make that learning contagious so you have an organisation full of people that you could lean on and leverage? It's a really good development for them as well, and they tend to love it. For my team, we are very lucky, cursed, I think lucky. We have a lot of these unique situations. I don't want to say every shutdown because, lots of them go very smoothly. But we do have the situations where we are doing quite unique recovery planning. So it's really important for our team to be quite vulnerable in, did we make a mistake? Once the dust is settled, do an after action review. Could you have made a different decision? What were the trade-offs that were known and or unknown? And what was the decision that you ended up making? And was there a better way to do it? So the next step for us is how do we start sharing that more broadly and get others to pick that apart? Well, hey, Chloe, your team could have done X, Y, or Z. Fantastic. Let's capture it. Let's have playbooks next time so we're not constantly starting from scratch. All right, so now I'll jump into the data. This wasn't our current state. This is something that we've produced over the last year or so. I love data. I've seen how it can be one of your greatest assets. It can really help you make that strategic forward planning, the forecasting, the decision making, the gap closing. Love it. The position that we were in with our data when I came into this team would make you cringe. I affectionately called it, we were just really old school. It was awful. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of spreadsheets, of emails, PDF reports. They were locked in permission-locked folders. It was each individual shutdown had 6 different reports that wasn't consolidated. Depending on who had done the report, they were reporting on kind of different metrics or categorising them differently as well. So it wasn't comparing apples to apples. It was not great. So when I was thinking through, I've got people on the bus now and they want to change and they want to level up in how we deliver. What's our current state? That back to basics was so critical for us. And it took a lot of coffee, probably a lot of chocolate because I'm a sweet tooth. And we had to get our baseline data right for the last 3 financial years. So we had to sift through all of that data so we could build our performance to plan dashboard. Now this is just a small snippet of that dashboard. It tries to consolidate across all of the shutdowns, our consistent reasons for late ad jobs, for what cancelled works we're seeing, if we are seeing closure overruns, what system, what shutdowns, what timeframes. So there's different ways you can cut and slice the data so you can try and then gap close it. This helped us get a better finger on the pulse, and it was a bit of a turnaround point for our team. But I can hear your brains, because I say this to myself regularly. Chloe, it's a P2P dashboard. Stop getting so excited. Everyone has one. I know. We didn't though. Now we do. But what did we do with it? So what is this data in reality for us? So on the left is our systems, and they're colour-coded in the 4 different systems. And an example of when we have a shutdown, on the right I've highlighted in yellow. We would take that entire footprint, which is really significant in terms of the closure footprints that we're taking. So the geographical impact of our shutdowns is pretty impressive, a little bit biased obviously. The work that the teams execute in those shutdowns is super cool. So on the right-hand side, I've put an example of our Blackwater closure, and something we've harped on about for the last 2 years with our operational teams, because they're one of our most important stakeholders, is feeding us the right information at the right time. We always talk about the ripple effect and how we can help them. If they tell us, into that central command centre, the first whiff of something might not be going to plan, which is normally minute 1, day 1, we can help mitigate that ripple impact, and we have a lot more options. So if you're one supervisor with one crew, with your own shift restrictions, trying to work through this problem, you have quite a linear journey that you're about to go on. But if you link in with, we sit in this Rockhampton base and this central base remotely, if you link in with us, we have oversight of every work activity, all of the resources around you, what options we might have to mitigate impacts to our customers, to transition to single line, to reduce the geography around you. And we lean in and provide that recovery planning and options. And that's where we assess scope, cost and access, and you start weighing up the trade-offs based off what the problem is. On the right example, the red dots is where we had 2 problems come up. Fast approaching closure handback, as always. On the right was a relatively minor one. They rang us up and said, hey, we've got a track fault. That was quite simple. The decision was made to fix the track fault because we could respond quite quickly, rather than returning the north coastline and then having to fix it at a later date anyway. On the left was a bit of a doozy. We were informed a little bit too late that the ballast train hadn't fully unloaded on a bridge rollout, and the track gang had already left site. So we had no hours no support, I guess, that we could use. So the recovery plan that we did for this one was we handed back everything else, and we left the safe working plan, or the geographical impact, really centred around that red dot. So that meant all of our other customers along the central west line and the north coast line could then recommence railing. They could start getting back to the port for their unloading activities, and they weren't impacted by what we were managing out on this branch line. If they hadn't have told us, we wouldn't have been able to lean in and support with that transition. I feel like this is one of my horror stories, and our team still has PTSD from this closure. This is an example of a Goonyella closure. 3 red dots is always a bad sign, and I won't go into all of them. This was a big learning for us. We weren't getting the right data. We absolutely weren't getting the right communications. And we had to do a lot of work in our after-action review and our lessons learned with the operational teams after this closure. So the far left dot in Coppabella, we had some final grinds overrunning. And the middle dot, we had a formation that was overrunning. And this is where we had the comments of, we'll hand it back when we hand it back, Chloe, and we were getting hung up on. And then they were screening our calls. Or we had, you know, we'll deal with it. We don't need anything from you guys. Cool. What that meant is we held the entire red box geography. So we had a really poor outcome for this closure recovery. If we had that early intervention and that, you know, early assistance as soon as they noticed something was going wrong, we potentially could have helped them transition to single line running, or we could have reduced that geography so any stowed traffic on the further west could have started provisioning and could have started running to try and mitigate those impacts to them. This did result in some cancellations, and like I said before, there was a lot of lessons and there was a lot of discussions post this. We did have another shutdown with similar teams a couple of weeks ago, and it was chalk and cheese. So we really lent in with them to go, well, this is how we can help you. This is what we could have done differently. I feel like we very much have a seat at the table now with them because they can see the value that we can provide them. Because at the end of the day, we're there to alleviate pressure from those supervisors in field. You ring us, you tell us your problem, focus on managing the safety of your site. We'll come back with what your options are, which hopefully will be really helpful. So unlike mining in WA, we are not the master of our own destiny at the railway. So the customer element is a really important one for us. And typically we were playing things quite close to our chest when things weren't going to plan. This was something we had to change, which we've kicked off throughout FY25, which is our customer comms. So we have become really comfortable with being transparent with our customers and issuing them formal comms through our control, our Visi rails, of if we're anticipating that we are going to overrun. The end goal here, not only for our shutdown scope delivery and safe delivery of that works, is also we have that interdependent relationship with our above rail operators and our customers because we want that supply chain productivity. So if we don't tell them that, shivers, I think we might be potentially overrunning 2 hours, we could have train drivers heading to their trains, trying to provision trains, and then sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Whereas if we do tell them early, we have more flexibility, or they have more flexibility to readjust rosters, depending on when we tell them, and it does have stronger outcomes for that supply chain. In some instances where we've caught it early enough, which we have had some really good examples of that, they've been able to change rosters, they've been able to redesign train pathing, and we've seen some essentially some free kicks for what was quite a tough situation to work through. And the big one for my team is we absolutely can identify free kicks, but we can also create them. Now I'll glaze through some of these. This is just an example of the customer comms that we send out. So on the left, we had one go a little bit poorly with an excavator undercut site. We knew at that point that we were going to overrun. It was a confirmed overrun. And on the right is the kind of VisiRail email that they get. The recovery planning that we were able to do in this instance, we were able to mobilise additional ballast train crewing, which if anyone works with train crew, that's a feat in itself. We slid the recovery plan so we could deliver the entire scope of works, and we were able to transition to single line to mitigate some of those impacts as well. So we didn't have any cancellations in this example, which is always the ultimate goal. And then that's an example if they open that attachment in the email, that's kind of what they get. So it'll identify exactly what services are paths that could be impacted, what section is impacted, and a brief summary of what's happening and if we'll be providing any further updates or if that's the confirmed status of it. What's different that we've started doing is we also issue them for potential. So we will issue comms if it's a confirmed shutdown overrun. We'll also issue them if something's unfolding and we don't quite yet have our finger on the pulse of what that is. that is a judgment call, I'll be honest, and we do need to be really balanced in our approach with that. What we see sometimes is we will go into recovery planning, and sometimes for the complex scenarios, it can take us hours to figure out the current state, what our options are, and the new estimates of schedule slide or potential overrun. Those hours are just wasted then if we haven't issued anything, and depending on crew changeover times, it's sometimes too little too late when we issue that confirmed notice. So we are trialling that, that potential as well for the bigger ones that we've got a relative sense of confidence is going to turn into something. So far, we've received really good feedback from sending these. So we will absolutely continue to do it. But that was one really exciting thing in FY25. I thought I'd touch on a couple of things that we use regularly in our recovery scenarios, which again, I don't feel it's going to be glaringly new to any of you. When the chips are down and when it's that high pace and we need that accurate decision making, the team will frequently use the Moscow method. So how do we reframe our thinking to what are the absolute must-dos? What are the shoulds? What are the coulds? What are the we can push them, we can do them later on another day. So it helps you really focus your energy on the right things and the things that matter the most. The other helpful one, which I've used for many years when I was working on site in an execution role, and I've noticed I've started using this in shutdowns and recovery meetings as well, is the PEPC model. And I say it opposite to the acronym, so people, planning, equipment and change. It's quite hard when you are in a fast-paced environment to know that you've done all of your checks and balances and you haven't missed something, that something's not going to catch you out. I do find that acronym and the different prompts, they're a really good way for us to stop and recollect as a team and go, are we comfortable that we have considered all things in this recovery plan, as well as all your other trade-offs, scope, cost, access, resources. There's a lot that does need to go through your brain, but those couple of ones will just really help settle things. Bear with me, this next one's a little bit ridiculous, but I had to do it. Okay. You'll hear lots of buzzwords, and I'm not going to jam the buzzwords down your throat. You'll hear have the tools in your tool belt and all that kind of stuff. The one that I love and that I swear by is you will always have your phone of friends. Have your Googles. So I absolutely have my Googles, which are my encyclopedias of knowledge, which so far they haven't been able to answer a railway technical question, and it's almost become a competition where now I'm trying to find more difficult questions that I'm asking them. But also have your Grinch, and my Grinches are sometimes my favourite people to ring. I want them to poke holes in my idea. I invite them to tell me, how is this going to fail? Why do you hate it? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? It helps you problem solve it before you go to the masses or before you start engaging your team. And you want to know, particularly when someone is poking holes through something, am I really invested in this? And do I really believe in this change or this idea that I'm trying to push? The Grinches really help you with that. Now the hats, if you've been to any training course in the last probably 10 to 20 years, you would have seen the hats. So I won't go into them in too much detail. But what I will say is know the mindset that you bring to the room as a leader. And the energy that you bring to the room is absolutely contagious. So if you are coming off as, really stressed, really grumpy, panicked, that you'll start to notice the team are feeding off that as well. So know what your mindset is. Are you negative? Are you really process orientated? And have you got a balanced view across your team? And make sure you know what their mindsets are as well, so you can really consider things from all angles. I do find that quite helpful. All right, so some of the changes that we've seen and what this data has helped us look at is, you should all be familiar with the value versus effort matrix. So, high value, high effort. What's your low-hanging fruit? What's your must-dos that are just really important despite taking a lot of time? And what's the stuff that your team's spending a lot of time on that you should be challenging and you should be looking to take off the plate to replace with something more valuable? So for us, I explained the position we were in with our data. It got a little bit worse in execution. So we had 2 people for entire shifts for the entire duration of the shutdown just producing shutdown reports. It was 20 plus pages. They sent it out 3 times a day to a PDL of 130 plus people. And I'd go around and I'd ask people, oh, did you see that report? Or did you see that comment? Or this is off track? Nah, we don't read that. Cool, all right. The value versus effort matrix probably wasn't quite paying off for me there. So something that we've recently changed is we've created a reporting dashboard, which is just a live shutdown dashboard for how are we tracking in our shutdown. So for the most part, people want to know, are we on track, are we off track, or are we monitoring something in active recovery? The absolute big hitters, have we had any injuries or incidents? And are there any really keynote things that we want to get the masses across if we're seeing some trends across the different work sites? So anyone can open the link, they'll see the current state of what's evolving, how we're progressing to plan, and we'll just send out a daily email prompt of, hey, reminder, here's the link and any key call-outs that we want to touch on. So that's one really big improvement that we've had from looking at that, value versus effort. Data is absolutely your friend, but don't drown in it. And if data's not serving you, then challenge it. All right, so what results have we seen? There's a lot happening. There's a lot that still needs to happen. We're very much on a growth journey at the moment. I'm super pumped for the year ahead. I really believe I've got the right mindsets now, both internal to my team and the stakeholders around us, that we can achieve some really great things in the coming months. We have seen a year-on-year reduction in our closure overrun in Blackwater. So it halved from FY 24 to 25, which is super awesome. The Gunyella system, and I've cooked this data a little bit so it doesn't seem too awful. We had a 46% closure reduction over 2 years, but what we did notice from 24 to 25 is it was relatively stable and it hasn't shifted too much in that financial year. So that system is a focus for us in 26. It's also geographically quite far away from where my team is. So we're trying to link in and understand, when these closures are overrunning, how can we have stronger relationships where we are being informed and we can intervene early. We've seen improved and simplified reporting, engagement and collaboration with teams, and we have had better access outcomes with these early recovery plans. So what's on my wish list? My wish list is long. I've only put a couple of things up here. I loved the keynote speaker around AI, and I'm that person that's a little bit, how can I apply this? I would love for us to work smarter, not harder, and I know that there is so much potential, not only in the programs that we're using, but also, how can we start incorporating AI into our shutdown planning? I would love better data forecasting. We've got our back to basics, we've got a pretty solid baseline now, but now we need to level up. We should be anticipating what defects might be coming into a shutdown. We should be doing comparative review of schedule actuals to go, well, why was this formation 6 hours quicker than this formation? Did you have extra people? Did you have extra machines? How do we apply that to other works for, cost and access efficiency? And like I mentioned, really huge growth year ahead, particularly around that data lever. So my ask of all of you, I love to brainstorm. If you have got any cool ideas or any awesome stuff that you've seen in your roles or your businesses, please come and see me, because I would love to just soak up all of that information. Or if you just want to come and talk to me about my labradoodles, I'm also happy to talk about them for 2 hours straight. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for your time. I've tried not to ramble too much and kind of cover those 3 main things. The biggest takeaway that I wanted to make sure that you were all across is you absolutely can't leverage change unless you check the mindset of the team and the people around you. So that's your first enabler. The second one is data is your best friend, but don't drown in it and make sure it serves you. And the third one, particularly in shutdowns or in most of your organisations, if you don't have stakeholder alignment, you will be challenged from the get-go. Invest the time. Get people to understand what worth your team can bring and how you can serve them, and equally so how they can serve you. Thank you.
Awesome. Big round of applause for Chloe there. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if there's a few quick ones from the audience.
Great presentation, Chloe. Just quick question. You did mention about these mindsets and everything, so it's really important to have good growth mindset across the organization so that we can grow. But I wanted to ask you specifically, did you experience any resistance in shifting mindsets, and how was it like? How did you overcome it, and what level was it at? Like, was it from the frontline staff? Was it at the manager level or the management side? Yeah, just wanted to know that bit if you have answer.
Great question. I could do a whole speech about this. So I did a few years in human resources and mining when I first started, and then supervised and was superintendent for 5 or 6 years before jumping across to this. A lot of people management stuff that has been really tough. This was a really tricky team because it was quite small. The groupthink was really strong around that fixed mindset, and I did have 1 or 2 people that were driving that groupthink for everyone else in quite a negative way. So I had to find my change champions. They weren't going to listen to me, quote unquote. They're like, "You love your job too much. We need to know that this is real and this is going to, matter for us." So I had to get the change champions on board, get them invested in it, and we did have to go through some tough things. We went through a roster change last year. We, recently went through some fairly significant business changes as well. I do believe that the team has come out stronger, but there's been a lot of tough and honest conversations around what my observations are and the things that I needed them to do or the way that I needed them to present.
Awesome, thank you. In the interest of time, we might leave it there to give you time to get to your next room. So 2 things, Chloe will be at the corner for questions and more engagement if you'd like, or if you've got any ideas you want to share with her, please go along there. Can you also please jump onto the app and give Chloe some feedback? So we'd love to your view on the presentation and share some of your insights with Chloe. But big round of applause, well done. Thank you very much, Chloe.
Thank you.